Chapter 401, Pure Evil, 3. Splash. Splash. Splashing water onto my face, I stared at my haggard figure in the mirror. Glaring dark circles bagged beneath my eyes as my mind felt numb. Glink. Turning off the tap, I turned around. My eyes paused on a certain book in the middle of the table. My heart remained calm as I stared at the book. Or rather, my head was too numb to process what was happening around me. Nothing excited nor stimulated my emotions. Closing my eyes, I sat down on my bed and leaned forward. Just what happened? Ever since waking up, I've been trying to make heads or tails of what had just occurred to me. My head really hurt. For starters, the world I was in not too long ago was definitely not my own world. Or did that world even exist in the first place? From the fact that I had no recollection of my parents' faces, my own name, and the fact that the prestigious university I wanted to go to was called University A name which itself seemed far too generic to make sense. Putting everything together, everything that I previously thought that I knew no longer started to make sense inside of my head. Ag. My head hurts. Grasping my head with my hands, I ruffled my hair into a mess. Everything was a mess. A mess I couldn't quite figure the answer to. There's also him. The previous Ren. Just thinking about him spread uneasiness throughout my whole body. There was definitely something odd about that guy. How did he know about the fact that the world was a novel? I never gave him the password of my laptop, so it shouldn't have been possible for him to figure out that the world I was in was that of a novel I wrote. Furthermore, how did he know to ask the right questions? Like what my name was, whether I recalled my parents' faces, and the name of the university I wanted to go to. The order of the questions didn't really make sense. It was as though he already knew about my answers beforehand. H. I suddenly stood up. My head throbbed even more fiercely. Pacing around the room, I started to think back to my first interaction with the previous Ren in search of an answer. This wasn't hard. I had only interacted with him once throughout my whole life, so I could still vividly remember what had happened. It was the time he was showing me his past experiences with Matthew and what was going on with his parents. My parents. I remember that time clearly. I could see just how sad he was. Was that a facade or was that really him? At this point, I no longer knew. Ugh. I groaned. Massaging my head, I thought even further. Ever since meeting him, did something strange ever happen to me? My brows knit tightly. Placing my hand on my chin, I fell into deep thought. Something strange happening after meeting him. My brows, which were knit together, suddenly jumped up in shock. Wait, hold on. Looking back at any of the incidents that had occurred right after meeting the previous Ren, a thought suddenly occurred to me. My head snapped upwards. There was one. My hands fidgeted all over. My thought process. It definitely changed after meeting him. It never occurred to me before, but didn't my personality change moments after meeting him? I may have not noticed it back then, but now that I look back at myself, right after meeting the previous Ren, I started to get this weird idea that everything around me was a chess piece and that everything was under my control. Where did that come from? If I looked back at my previous behavior the moment prior to meeting the previous Ren, everything I did was completely different. My personality was different. Never before had I had such thoughts about treating everyone as a chess piece and having everything under my control. It was odd. I never put too much thought into it in the past because I never felt it. I never felt the change. But now that I was looking back at them from this new perspective, it really did seem as though something within me had been forcefully changed. It was as though someone was forcing traits and different ideologies inside of me. Ideologies that I had never once thought about. A wild and crazy theory suddenly pierced through my brain. My breathing evened out. It can't be, right? Impossible. No, I refused to believe that. I shook my head repeatedly. It couldn't be. Yeah, there's no way something like that happened. Right? My toes curled inwardly. Trying. Amidst my anxiety, my communication suddenly rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. Lowering my head, I looked at the message. It was Waylon. Ren, the tournament will begin tomorrow. Are you ready? Should I come to pick you guys up tomorrow morning? Closing my eyes, I suppressed all the anxiety inside of me. Taking my communication device, I quickly sent back a message. Yeah, that would do. After sending the message, I shut off the communication device. Taking a deep breath, I took my jacket and put on my face mask. Then I proceeded to head for the door. I needed some fresh air to sort out my thoughts. The thoughts were eating away at my sanity. See, I click. Closing the door behind me, I walked down the stairs. Ding. A loud chime rang inside of Kevin's head as he slowly opened his eyes. The first thing he saw as soon as he opened his eyes was a system notification. ===. Synchronization complete. Synchronization, 34%. ===. Sitting up straight, Kevin exhaled deeply. Covering his forehead with his hand, he supported his body with his other hand. What in the world did I just see? The vision he saw was clear. Kevin vividly remembered everything that he saw in the vision, and it was because he remembered that at the moment he couldn't quite grasp what was happening around him. Sitting up straight, Kevin was able to calm himself down. That was me, wasn't it? It had to be. The fact that he was desperately searching for Emma, and that the name of the black figure was Kevin, he didn't believe for 1 second that the vision wasn't about him, but the vision he saw was not something he had ever experienced before. Could that have been a vision of the future? Leaning his head back, Kevin stared at the white ceiling of the room. Just thinking back at the vision made his body tremble. If not the future, what else could it be? The more he thought about it, the more certain he was about his analysis. Whatever he just saw, it was the future. Fuck. Kevin's fists clenched tightly. Just the thought of Emma dying on him hurt his very being. Who was that man? Kevin questioned. There was another part in the vision he saw. The features of the figure were obscured and so was his voice, but from what he saw, the figure was the one that killed Emma. His words and the flask in his hands already gave him an idea of what had happened. The man had purposely killed Emma. Kevin was sure. His fists clenched even more tightly as anger rose within his body. He needs to die. His eyes flashed with hatred as he recalled that scene. But there was only one problem: Kevin did not know who the man was. He felt slightly familiar though. As though he had met him before, yet at the same time he didn't. There was this chilly air surrounding the man that sent shivers down Kevin's spine. Could that have been Rin? No, he wouldn't do that. Kevin quickly shook his head, trying to discard such thoughts from his mind. Although the two figures bore slight resemblances, Kevin knew Ren. He would never do such a thing to him. It couldn't be, right? Kevin weakly shook his head. Despite his many attempts at trying to deny what he saw, the confidence he had within him slowly crumbled apart. Doubt started to creep into his mind. What do I do? Leaning forward, Kevin covered his face with both hands. He really did not know what to believe in at the moment. Before I knew it, my footsteps stopped in front of the training grounds. By the time I woke up from the dream, it was early in the morning. I thought about going around the city to explore the city, to get my mind off of things, but having walked a couple of steps out of my residence, I subconsciously made my way towards the training grounds. This is good too. What I needed at the moment was to clear my head. Training was a good way to do that. Breathing out, I opened the gates of the training ground. Show. Guess she's already here. Walking towards the changing area, I could hear the sound of Amanda's arrows splitting the air apart. Loosening up my shoulders, I quickly got changed before entering the training grounds. Once I stepped into the place, Amanda appeared in my view. With her glossy black hair tied behind her back exposing her neck, Amanda plucked her cherry lips together as she pulled the string of her bow, resting it right next to her chin. With one of her eyes closed, her entire focus was on the target before her. She still hasn't noticed me. A wicked thought suddenly crossed my mind as a smirk soon emerged on my lips. Hiding my presence as much as I could, I tried to sneak behind her. Fortunately, she was so focused on the target at the moment that I was easily able to get behind. It wasn't long before I was right behind her. Staring at her figure from behind, just as she was about to release her pull of her bow, I softly whispered near her ear. "What are you doing?" "Kaya." A shrill cry escaped from Amanda's mouth as her face paled. The scream was so loud and so uncharacteristic of her that I was taken aback for a moment. Thump. What followed after the scream was a low thump as Amanda fell, but first on the ground. T. A moment of silence ensued as Amanda quickly regained her calm. Turning her head, our eyes met. With her cheeks blushing in embarrassment, Amanda glared in my direction. "I'm sorry, I did not know you were going to be that scared. I thought you would have at most just flinched." Supporting her body up with one arm, Amanda took her bow with the other hand. Recovering from her embarrassment, her face became extremely cold. Gulp. I swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The aura the current Amanda gave off was extremely terrifying. similar to that of a demon that was about to devour me. Regret started to seep inside of my body. I took a step back. And another one after that. Before I knew it, I took over 10 steps back. Thump. As I was taking steps back, my back suddenly bumped against something hard. Turning my head to look behind, my heart sank. Oh no. Without realizing it, I had already moved back all the way to the other side of the training room. Standing opposite me, Amanda's cold and emotionless eyes continued to glare in my direction. Staring back at her with a wry smile on my face, I raised my hands as a sign of defeat. Now Amanda, I know that you're mad, but could you forgive me this one time? Without saying anything, a powerful wave of mana sprung forth from Amanda's body as she aimed her bow in my direction. Guess not. Suddenly, over a dozen or so translucent blue arrows materialized on her bow. Staring at her from the distance, I silently cursed. *T. Show. Not even a second after my words faded and Amanda released the string of her bow. What followed after was an avalanche of arrows. My face quickly cringed at the sight. Chapter 4. C.I. Clake. Closing the door behind him, Kevin got out of his apartment. Taking a deep breath, he stared at the scenery before him with lethargic eyes. Closing his eyes for a brief moment of time, he soon opened them again and proceeded to head down. There you are, Kevin. Waiting for him below was Emma, who waved her hand in his direction. Kevin's feet came to a pause. Staring at Emma, who was waiting for him from below, Kevin's unfocused eyes became a little bit more focused. Emma, she's alive. Faint fragments of the vision replayed in his mind as he stared at her. Each time recollection resulted in a stinging sensation inside of his heart. Smiling weakly, he nodded his head and greeted her back. Yeah, I'm here. His voice was rather weak, but it was loud enough for Emma to hear. Of course, Emma was able to notice that something was wrong as her brows knit together. What is up with you? Are you okay? I'm good. Kevin gave a short reply. Then, placing his hand on the handrail, he walked down the stairs of the building, not convinced by Kevin's words. Emma leaned forward. A worried look flashed across her face. You don't seem to be okay? Should we have you checked? I'm really fine. Kevin raised his head and met Emma's eyes. They stared off for a good minute before Emma eventually relented. All right, if you say so. Staring into the distance, she flipped her hat backward. Let's go then. The others are probably already waiting for us. Rummaging through her pockets, Emma took out a pack of gums. Taking one of the gums, she placed it in her mouth and started chewing. Munch. Munch, want one? Extending her hand, she offered one to Kevin. Raising his hand, Kevin politely refused. No thank you. Munch. Munch, suit yourself. Putting the pack of gums away, Emma blew a bubble gum and proceeded to head towards the center of the Isanor. Pup. Yucca. But just as she took 2 steps, her bubble burst apart and the gum splattered all over her face. Today was the day of the conference tournament. As the sun slowly rose from the horizon, the atmosphere in Isanor became extremely lively and filled with excitement. This was the event that everyone was eagerly awaiting. Not just for the prizes but for its meaning as well. It was the event that decided the fate of the alliance between the 3 races. When I arrived at the main tournament square, the place was already boiling with noise. Separated from each other, numerous dwarves, elves, orcs and humans alike gathered in groups as they chatted with each other. Apart from the members of the other races who were fairly relaxed, every human wore an expression of nervousness and excitement. This was understandable, however, as the tournament held a lot more meaning to them than the other races. Looks like they are already here. Staring into the distance, I caught a glimpse of Amanda, Melissa and Jean. They were without a doubt the center of attention. They looked like famous celebrities surrounded by a bunch of fans, all trying to curry favor from them. Their behavior was understandable, however. After all, not only were they extremely good-looking, but their talents and achievements at their age made them individuals to look up to. Without a doubt, they were the future pillars of humanity. A faint smile appeared on my lips as I witnessed this scene from afar. Some things just never change. The scene was quite familiar as I had seen it multiple times back at the lock. Despite the fact that they had all grown up and were entirely different people from the past, their shine never disappeared. In fact, they shone more brilliantly than ever before. All right now, where are the others? Taking my eyes away from them, I glanced around the crowd and looked for Waylon and the others. To be honest, I was supposed to have come with them to the place, but since I didn't want to skip my training session, I decided to just go by myself. Amanda was also training with me, but it appeared that she was a lot faster than me at changing. Guess the stereotype of girls being slow at changing was just a myth. I see them. Fortunately, it didn't take me too long to spot the others. Standing at the far corner of the human section, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure. It was Douglas. Behind him were the others. Apart from me, everyone was currently not wearing a skin mask. Well, they didn't need to. The only ones that had to hide his identity were Waylon and me. The others not so much. I was quite thankful for this. It made the search a lot easier for me. Fixing my clothes, I headed in their direction. You're finally here. Upon arriving, I was immediately greeted by Douglas, who had a calm smile on his face. I nodded back. Yeah, my training session was a lot longer than I expected. That's fine. We're not in a hurry. Douglas reassured with the same calm smile. I softly smiled in response. Then, turning around, I proceeded to greet the others. Apart from Leopold, Small Snake, and Ryan, who weren't planning on participating, Ava and Hein had nervous looks on their faces. This was quite funny to me, as not too long ago they were brimming with confidence. But as they stared at the people around them, their previous confidence completely deflated. Well, I understood where their worries came from. After all, there were a lot of talented people present today, and everyone here was pining for the top prices. That included me as well. I was also aiming for the top spot. There was an item that I absolutely had to get at all costs. It was the item that only the winner could get, and with it, I would have no trouble breaking through to A-rank in half of the time that I originally anticipated. While in thought, raising my head, I suddenly noticed Melissa and the others heading in my direction. I deeply sighed at the sight. This is definitely Melissa's doing. She knew just how much I hated attention, and she was definitely coming to me knowing that it would attract the attention of the others. How petty of her. Under everyone's watch, the three of them stopped right in front of me. As they stopped, I suddenly felt hundreds of eyes directed in my direction and my mouth twitched. Secretly rolling my eyes, I asked in an annoyed tone. Why are you doing this to me? Of course, I didn't hide the displeasure in my voice as I tried to make it as evident as possible. Doing what? But of course, Melissa being Melissa feigned ignorance and pretended to not have understood the implications behind my words. I sighed in exasperation once I saw this. Here. Extending her hand, Melissa handed me a set of cards. Lifting her head, she nudged her head in the direction of the others. Although I don't think you will need it, I believe that your friends might need them. She was obviously referring to Hein and Ava. Guess I'll take you up on the offer. Nodding, I took the cards from her. Then turning around, I handed them to Hein and Ava. Hein already had an idea of what the cards did as he saw me use them against John not too long ago. But Ava didn't, so I spent the next couple of minutes explaining to them how the cards worked. Once I was done, the both of them looked at Melissa with grateful looks on their faces. Moving my head sideways and staring behind Melissa and the others, I wondered out loud. By the way, have you guys seen Kevin by any chance? Kevin wasn't really the type to be late. His absence kind of felt weird. Or maybe I was just overthinking things. Could just be that he was hanging out with Emma since she was also missing. They're over there. Right on cue, just as I was wondering about Kevin's whereabouts, Amanda suddenly spoke as she pointed towards the distance. Where? There. Squinting my eyes, I tried to look in the direction of where she pointed, but my vision wasn't as good as hers, so it took me a while to spot Kevin. Fortunately, it didn't take long for me to finally see them. Oh, I see them. Walking with Emma next to him, Kevin's head hung low. Emma looked like her usual self, but Kevin looked a bit different than usual. There was this weird aura surrounding him. Is he sick or something? My brows knit at the sight. Not only was his aura weird, but his hair was disheveled and his overall complexion looked extremely pale. The current Kevin looked to be in no state to participate in the tournament. While I was looking at Kevin in the distance, seemingly having noticed my stare, Kevin raised his head and our eyes met. But the moment our eyes met, a strange scene occurred as Kevin's body froze and his body trembled. It was faint, but it was enough to catch my attention. Taken aback by his reaction, I tilted my head. Is he okay? Why did he react like that? Meeting Ren's eyes, Kevin felt his body completely paralyzed from top to bottom. A cold chill ran through the top of his spine as his pupils dilated. Staring at Ren, Kevin's eyes flickered slightly. He looks familiar to that figure's back. This thought only lasted for a brief moment of time as he soon snapped out of it. Huh. What just happened? For a brief moment of time, Ren's figure overlapped with the guy from his vision. It sent chills down Kevin's spine. Staring at Ren once again, the feeling that he felt before was no longer there, but there was this strange mist enshrouding his figure, making Kevin doubt his eyes. Raising his hands, he rubbed his eyes, but the mist around Ren never disappeared. Blinking a couple of times, Kevin deeply sighed. Sigh, I must be seeing things from not having slept all night. Whatever the vision was, it was messing with his mind. Was he perhaps starting to get paranoid? Kevin did not know, but the nagging feeling inside of his heart never disappeared. Kevin, are you coming or not? It was then that Emma's voice rang from the front. Coming. Nodding his head, Kevin followed along. While he was walking, many tried to strike a conversation with him, but he politely waved them off. He was already used to such scenes. It wasn't long before he arrived before the others. You guys are finally here. Ren greeted, waving in their direction with his signature lazy smile. Pop. With a loud pop, Emma's gum burst apart and she nodded her head. Hey. Kevin followed up after her as he awkwardly waved his hand. Even though Ren was wearing a mask, the aura he gave off was the same. It was easy to tell him apart. Walking up to him, Ren worriedly asked, Kevin, you all right? Lifting his head and staring at Ren, Kevin put on a bright smile as he nodded his head. Yes, I'm all good. That's so? All right then. Extending his hand, Ren patted Kevin on the shoulder. You look a bit off today. Did you perhaps train all night? Don't tell me that you were that nervous. Haha, you got me. Kevin responded with a forceful laugh. Lowering his head and staring at Ren's hand, Kevin's eyes became slightly unfocused. As he stared at Ren, the strange feeling inside of his heart slowly started to disappear as the mist around Ren slowly started to clear up. His mind slowly started to calm down as a result. Yeah, whoever that figure in the vision was, it wasn't Ren. He would never do such a thing. Chapter 403 Doubt. Dong. Dong. As time passed and the arena grounds began to fill, a loud toll spread throughout the whole surroundings. Once the bell tolled, all chattering stopped and everyone raised their head. Standing in the middle of the platform was an enchanting elven figure with silver hair. From the color of her hair, it was clear that she was of pure elven blood. There are many of you here and all of you already know what this tournament is about and what it represents. Therefore I'll make this quick. The sound of her voice was crisp and pleasant to the ears as it smoothly lingered in the air like the note of a fine-tuned instrument. For the preliminaries, contestants will be paired with a random opponent until the top 128 participants are selected. The real tournament will begin once the top 128 contestants are selected. Pausing for a brief moment of time so that everyone in the square understood her words, the elf continued. For the preliminaries, the opponents will be decided randomly. Each and every one of you has already been assigned a number, and when you're called up it will be your turn. It's that simple. Lowering their heads, the contestants stared at the bracelet that was resting on their wrists. On it was their alias and number. That will be all. The elven presenter wasn't a woman of many words. Once she said what she wanted to say, she directly left. Once her figure disappeared from the arena grounds, the place instantly became bustling as an air of excitement and anticipation shrouded the surroundings. The upper echelon of the four races was gathered on a viewing platform near the square. Amongst them, seated at its very center was the Elven Queen. Seated on her right was Gervis, the dwarven metropolis keeper. Keen interest flashed across his eyes as he swept his gaze throughout the grounds. Not going to lie, I'm actually quite curious about the upcoming battles. Here. Next to him was a towering figure that emanated a terrifying pressure that could cause anyone below S rank to quake in their boots. He was Brutus, the Orson leader and one of the most powerful beings on Earth. Brutus's face was wide and he had deep green eyes, making him look thoughtful. His face was expressionless as he stared at the Orson resting area. Whenever he took a breath, the air around him trembled. Here. Lastly, seated on the left of the Elven Queen was Octavius Hall. The strongest human. Amongst everyone present, he was by far the weakest. Despite his strength being at the pinnacle of the human domain, with a simple gaze, everyone could tell that there was a strength difference between the three representatives and him. Everyone regardless of rank could sense the gap. Not minding the stares, Octavius expressionlessly stared at the human side. His dull eyes never once rippled despite being in the presence of such big shots. He may have not been the strongest, but the way he carried himself left a good impression on the three other representatives. It was then that the Elven Queen finally opened her mouth. "Should we initiate the tournament?" Her airy yet faint voice easily traveled through the ears of each individual present. "Indeed we shall," Gervas replied while stroking his beard. Next to him Brutus silently nodded his head. "Here." "Yes." The last to reply was Octavius. His voice contained heavy hints of solemnness as his eyes were currently locked on a black-haired male with crimson-red eyes in the stands. The male was none other than Kevin Voss. Although he didn't say anything, it was clear that Octavius had some expectations regarding the individual over there. Sensing the solemnness behind Octavius's voice, the other representatives remained expressionless. They understood very well what this contest meant to him and even for them in some sense. "Very well then." Standing up, the Elven Queen waved her hand at once. Bang bang. Following her movement, loud explosions rang in the air, signaling the start of the preliminaries. Overhearing the loud explosions in the air that marked the beginning of the tournament, I focused my attention on the arena grounds where the referees had already ascended. They stood there motionless, waiting for everyone to stop speaking. Once silence finally descended, the referees finally called up the first few contestants. Number 021, Dugrim Broadgut versus number 696, Ostenak. Number 1876, Arnold Kane versus number 984, Korak. Number 271, Han Yufei versus number 535, Eslan. Among the names called up, two in particular attracted my attention, and that was because I knew who the two individuals were. Of course I knew them. They were people whom I had gone to the academy with. The first one to leap onto the stage was Arnold. Compared to when I last saw him, he looked to have put on even more muscle as his towering figure stood out from the other humans. What was mind-boggling about his transformation was the fact that his physique almost rivaled that of his opponent, Korak, an orc. On the other hand, calmly walking up the stage was Han Yufei. With a calm and composed look on his face, he briefly analyzed his opponent, an elven male with pure golden air. An air of indifference spread from his body. The atmosphere of the entire place suddenly began to boil as everyone focused their attention on one of the platforms. Watching the scene from afar, I crossed my arms with a solemn look. Next to me were Kevin and the others. "Who do you think is going to win?" Kevin asked. Compared to when I first saw him, he looked to be in a much better mood as his eyes cleared up a little. Stroking my chin, I replied. "Arnold and Han Yufei should have no problem winning their current matches. They got lucky with their picks. Han Yufei and Arnold were the creams of the crop of the human domain while their opponents weren't. And my words proved to be correct as their matches did not last for long. Han Yufei's match lasted for only 2 minutes while Arnold's lasted for 5 minutes. It sounded like a lot, but by the time their fight ended, the other matches were still in progress, not even close to their climax. The way they quickly disposed of their opponents instantly gathered the stares and attention of the many participants and spectators. With solemn and composed looks, they both calmly walked back to their places. As time passed, the matches on the platforms quickly came to a close. Members from each race were eliminated at once, be it orc, elf, or dwarf. None were spared as they were all eliminated. However, it became clear to everyone present that among the contestants, the ones that were being eliminated the most were the members coming from the human side. It had gotten to the point where whenever a human got paired up with a member from another race, they would show excitement on their face, clearly rejoining at the fact that they got an easy pick. Number 2543, Kara Liam versus number 369, Estiander. Good luck. 2135. Amidst the fierce fighting, my name, or to be more precise, alias, was finally called up. Massaging my neck, I stood up. Guess it's my turn. As I stood up, Kevin and the others wished me luck. Good luck. Smiling at them, I headed down towards the platforms. Arriving at the platform, tensing my muscles, I jumped up. Thud. Softly landing on the platform, I looked to my front where my opponent stood. He was an elven male and he had a calm and composed look on his face. Despite the fact that he wasn't speaking, I could tell with just one look that he was looking down on me. The indifference in his eyes as he looked at me was clear for me to see. Not minding it, staring at my opponent, I thought, Should I go hard or easy on him? I could tell from a glance that my opponent was weaker than me. The aura that spread from his body was that of A less than C rank, a whole rank below me. As such, I wasn't worried about losing one bit. That aside, if I went hard right now, I would leave a powerful impression on my opponents and perhaps gain the fear factor, but that would also put a lot of attention on myself. Was gaining attention really worth it? Actually, I didn't really care about the attention. I'll see how things go. It wasn't so much for the fact that I didn't want others to pay attention to me, but it was because I didn't want to reveal all of my cards just yet, aka the cakey style. In a way, I wanted to gain the attention of the union. I had a little surprise for them in store. My lips twisted upwards as I thought about the future. Just as I had made up my mind on how to approach the situation, the referee suddenly cried out. Begin. The moment the referee's voice rang, my opponent's eyes changed. Following this, raising his hand in a lightning-fast manner, 2 complex magic circles materialized before him. From where I was, I could see that he was not holding back at all as the mana in the atmosphere vividly converged towards the magic circles. Within a couple of seconds, the magic circles fully lit up. Raising his head, Estiander, my opponent muttered before releasing the attack. Get out of the stage. Twang. Like a tsunami, a powerful wave of mana quickly headed in my direction at a frightening speed. A complicated look appeared on my face as I stared at the attack. Now, how should I dodge this without giving away too much? This really was a troublesome problem. Fortunately, it didn't take me too long to figure out the solution to this problem. Extending my hand, I took out 3 blue cards from my dimensional space. I then proceeded to channel my mana into them. Stomping my foot on the ground to gain some distance, I flicked the cards forwards. Shing. Shing. The moment the cards left my hand, to the shock of everyone present, 3 towering ice pillars rose from the ground. Not a second after the pillars came into contact with the attack, a terrifying explosion rang throughout the square. Boom. Broken ice fell everywhere and a mist suddenly engulfed the entire stage. Taking advantage of this moment, lightly pressing my foot onto the ground, my body shot in the direction of where I had last seen my opponent. Raising my fist, mana started to converge towards it. It wasn't long before my fist was fully coated in mana. Bang! Arriving before my opponent, pressing my foot on the ground, cracks formed underneath the sole of my foot as I swung my fist above my head. Thump! A muffled sound was heard as my fist connected with my opponent's face. As my fist connected with his face, I made sure to keep my strength in check and only hit him with 1/4 of my true strength. Yuck. But despite holding back, the force of my fist still caused the elf significant damage as he took 3 steps back. Raising my left hand, I channeled my mana towards another magic card and quickly flung it in my opponent's direction. Fwa! A powerful flame suddenly sprang out from the card, engulfing my opponent. Just as the flame was about to engulf my opponent entirely, a fierce wind blew and the flame disappeared. Number 2543, Caroleum. What followed after was the sound of the referee's voice announcing my victory. The moment the referee announced my victory, I felt countless eyes direct their attention towards me, or to be more precise, towards the cards in my hands. Lifting my head, my eyes soon met with Melissa's in the distance. An idea suddenly struck me as a smirk emerged on my face. Noticing my smirk, Melissa's face changed. "I'm sorry," I softly mouthed. If there was a chance to publicize the cards, then what better place than now? Since her father knew and the product was ready, there was no longer any need to keep it a secret. Raising my hand and staring at everyone present, I pointed it in her direction. "If you want to know more about these, you can ask her. She made them." Chapter 404. Hatred. Pure hatred. If there was one feeling to describe how the current Melissa felt, it would be pure hatred. At the moment, about 1/4 of the arena ground's attention was drawn towards her. Clenching her fists and staring at Ren, who was still standing on the arena grounds with a smirk on his face, Melissa's eyes turned into crescent moons. For a brief moment of time, Melissa looked back at the time when Ren was presumably dead. The good old days, as one might call them. Not even a week after he reappeared and he was already causing her problems. Fortunately, with the preliminaries in full swing and the others couldn't approach her yet, she was still safe. At least for now. Ugh, my head hurts. Just imagining what was going to happen once the first day ended, Melissa felt her head throb uncontrollably. Without a doubt, she was going to be hounded from all sides, all trying to gain information regarding the magic cards. She deeply sighed at the thought. Still, it wasn't the end of the world. She naturally understood what Ren was trying to pull. By displaying the power of the cards in front of everyone, he was essentially advertising to all 4 races the effects of the cards. Having spent over a year mass-producing the cards, she had plenty to give away. If she could secure a deal with the other races, she wouldn't need to worry about money for the rest of her life. She had to admit Ren's plan was quite smart. Ugh, Melissa's stomach suddenly churned at that thought. The words smart and Ren being put together left a bitter taste in her mouth. Number 456. Amanda Stern vs. Number 096 Kodiak. As Melissa's stomach churned in disgust at the thought of having complimented Ren, Amanda's name was suddenly called up. Seated next to her with her bow in hand, Amanda stood up. As she stood up, instantly, half of the stares directed at Melissa lingered on Amanda, who indifferently walked down the stands. Melissa sighed in relief as she saw this. With half of the stares gone, she felt much more comfortable. At the upper echelon section. Interesting. Gervis muttered as he stared at the human in the distance. The cards in his hand had truly left him surprised. Never had he seen such artifact technology. Update faster. Please come to his inner dwarven mind instantly became excited at the prospect of analyzing the cards. I'll ask him to give me a sample. Gervis thought as his eyes focused on the human standing in the middle of the square. He already knew who it was, but he just pretended to not know him. This was obviously at his request. Turning his head, he glanced at Octavius and complimented him. That's some peculiar technology. I didn't know you humans were able to create such artifacts. It is indeed an interesting piece of technology. Octavius calmly answered from the side. His eyes never left Melissa, who was currently everyone's center of attention. Despite the attention she was drawing from everyone present, he remained completely indifferent to it. As though he didn't care about her current predicament. What a strange human. Gervis thought as he studied Octavius from the side. He had interacted with many humans before, but none were as weird as Octavius. To Gervis, his composure was something admirable. It made it harder for people to understand what he was thinking. Even he had difficulty reading his expression. Number 456. Amanda Stern vs. Number 096 Kodiak. It was at that moment that the referee announced the next contestant, and a young human female stood up. The moment Amanda stood up, the Elven Queen's brows jumped up. Throughout the whole tournament, she had always remained seated with a stoic and indifferent look on her face. Despite all of the exciting matches that had occurred, her expression not once changed. Yet, the moment Amanda appeared, her facade crumbled slightly. This did not go unnoticed by the others, who stared at the Queen with hints of surprise on their faces. Then, turning their attention towards Amanda in the square, they all wondered, why would the Queen react like that at her appearance? Everyone believed that there was more to it than she let out. Ignoring them, the Elven Queen leaned her body forward. A rare trace of solemnity emerged on her face. It can't be. Hearing her name being called up, Amanda headed toward her designated platform. Good luck. Passing by Rin, who had a smug look on his face, Amanda nodded back. But just as he passed her, Rin didn't forget to whisper something in her ear. If you want to win, all you have to do is pull the same move like yesterday. Trust me, you will never lose if you use that move. Amanda's feet came to a pause and her head snapped backward, only to see Ren's figure quickly headed for his seat. Staring at his figure, Amanda gently bit her lips. Recalling the events of yesterday in the training grounds, a slight blush appeared on her cheeks. Lowering her head and letting the hair cover her face, Amanda's eyes flickered slightly. I concede you win. Forgive me. I will never do it again, okay? Flashbacks of him begging for forgiveness replayed in her mind. Was yesterday not enough? The grip of her bow tightened slightly. If he really wanted to try her moves again, she was all in for it. With her head still lowered, unbeknownst to her, the corner of her lips tugged upwards. Arriving before the platform, tensing her legs, Amanda jumped up. Her foot soon softly landed on the hard ground. Stabilizing her body and brushing her hair back, Amanda looked at her opponent. Standing opposite her was an orc. Just like any other orc, he had a well-built body and a ferocious look on his face. Staring at her with his ferocious gaze, her opponent, Kodiak, flexed his muscles, exposing his muscular body. Lowering her bow, Amanda closed her eyes. Swoosh. A soft wind blew and Amanda's clothes fluttered. Following this, the referee's voice rang out. Begin. The orc was the first to move following the referee's voice. Bang. Taking a step forward, the ground beneath the orc cracked apart. His clothes flapped about, while a dark green hue swirled on the surface of his body, creating a rather imposing sight. Feeling the tremendous power bursting from the orc opposite of her, Amanda remained motionless with her bow hung low. Perhaps feeling offended by Amanda's nonchalance, the former's foot pushed off the ground and he shot in Amanda's direction at incredible speeds. Within seconds his body had appeared in front of Amanda. His enormous fist, which was coated in a dark green hue, quickly smashed in her direction. The orc's attack was extremely swift and ferocious, reaching Amanda's face in the blink of an eye. It was clear that he was trying to deal serious damage to her. However, just as the fist was about to land on her pretty face, Amanda raised her hand, the one which held onto the bow, and took a step back. The movement was so abrupt and masterful that the attack narrowly missed as it brushed past her nose. What followed after was the orc's fist entering the middle of her body. With cold eyes, Amanda twisted the bow up and bent the orc's arm, trapping it. Yukek. The orc let out a pained cry as his arm twisted upwards. A faint green line appeared on the part where his skin touched with the string of her bow. Pushing her body up and tensing her core, Amanda agilely moved around the orc's massive body before her legs hooked onto his neck and she squeezed with all of her might. Keith. Caught off guard, the orc let out another groan as his face turned a deeper shade of green. Raising his hand, he gripped Amanda's leg and tried to remove it away from his neck. Gritting her teeth, Amanda raised her elbow and smashed it towards the orc's stomach. Thump. A muffled sound rang out as the orc's eyes went wide with pain. Not missing this opportunity, Amanda increased the strength of her hook even more as her body bent backward. Keith. As time passed, the orc's movements became more and more sluggish as the air was starting to get cut off his brain. Thud. With a large thud, the orc soon kneeled on the ground with his eyes completely white. He had clearly passed out. Number 456, Amanda Stern wins. Only after the referee announced her victory did Amanda finally release her leg hook and the orc fell face first onto the ground. H. Aside from her rough breathing, Amanda had flawlessly beat her opponent. Update faster. Please come to what was more impressive was the fact that throughout the whole time, she had done this while fighting in close range, rather than long range, which was her specialty. Whew. Lifting her head and staring into the sky, Amanda took a deep breath before standing up. Remind me to never piss her off. A cold chill ran down my spine as I stared at Amanda choking the orc. Although I knew that Amanda could be fierce at times, now that I saw it firsthand, I realized that I had been playing with fire. Overall, the match only lasted a total of 2 minutes before she emerged victoriously. She truly has improved a lot over the years that I haven't seen her, I thought as I stared at her figure basking in the cheers of the crow. She looked especially dazzling standing underneath the bright sun from the sky. That was a good match. I greeted Amanda once she returned. Out of precaution, I scooched over to the side. Turning her head and staring at me, Amanda raised her brow. You saw what I did there, didn't you? That was what her face implied as I looked at her. Nodding, my lips pursed together. I shouldn't have provoked her. Me and my big mouth. Avoiding her eyes, I looked at the weather. Beautiful day, isn't it? It is. Sitting down next to me, Amanda nodded her head as a faint and proud smile hung on her lips. My eyes squinted at the sight, but I decided to not say anything. I had already learned my lesson. Following this, neither of us spoke as we just stared at the intense battles in each of the various arenas. An explosive atmosphere shrouded the surroundings as defeating cheers began to erupt whenever a winner was decided. As time passed, more and more people began to be eliminated. However, the remaining individuals were becoming increasingly more powerful, causing the battles that followed to naturally be even more entertaining. Even I had to admit that some of the fights were extremely engaging. Over this period, I had 3 more matches. There were no upsets regarding my outcome. Using the magic cards, I was able to swiftly dominate my matches. There were some protests regarding my means of victory, but at the end of the day, magic cards were regarded as artifacts and therefore all arguments were quickly shut down since many used their own artifacts. This was perfect for me as I could continue advertising the power of the cards and at the same time keep my main cards hidden. My actions did attract quite a bit of attention, but it was soon overshadowed by the performance of a few other individuals. Especially Kevin, who practically dominated every single one of his matches. Before I knew it, I had entered the top 128. However, not all was smooth sailing. Out of the 128 competitors, only a meager 15 were humans. Yes, only 15 out of the 128 participants were human. The faces of most humans darkened at the thought. Already expecting such an outcome, I was fairly relaxed. Originally, in the novel, this world really comes from a novel, right? Yeah, novel. There was no need to doubt this. As I was saying, originally there were only supposed to be 11 participants, but the addition of me, Hein, Ava, and Troy had given humanity 4 more participants. Not that it really mattered anymore. Appearing in the middle of the battlegrounds was the same elven lady from before. Glancing towards her spectators, her eyesight briefly lingered on us. Or at least it looked like it did. Taken aback, I glanced towards the other to make sure I wasn't seeing things. Am I seeing things, or did she just look at us? Yeah, you weren't seeing things, Kevin replied with a deep frown on his face. I don't know if it's because... Before he could continue his sentence, the elven lady spoke up and all forms of noises ceased. Glancing toward each other, we both smiled and shrugged. Couldn't be helped. There have been a lot of exciting and entertaining matches, truly. Your outstanding performances have truly impressed the higher-ups, and I'm pleased to announce that this is the end of the preliminaries. Silence descended upon the arena grounds as her words drifted through the ear of each individual present. Amidst the silence, leaning slightly, I whispered into Kevin's ear. Kevin, you're supposed to clap once she ends. Really? Yeah. Oh, I see. Kevin innocently nodded his head in understanding. With a stoic face, I returned to my usual position. With that being said, this will be it for today. The main competition will begin tomorrow. I hope you have a good day. Once her words faded, for a brief moment of time, silence once again descended upon the arena grounds before the sound of someone clapping their hand suddenly resounded across the place. Clap. Clap. Instantly, countless gazes directed themselves in Kevin's direction. Huh. Noticing that something was strange, Kevin let out a surprised sound. Feeling a slight tug on his clothes, with her cap lowered to the maximum, trying to hide her expression, Emma whispered in his ear. Kevin, clapping is a human thing. Kevin's face froze at her words as his face paled and his mouth trembled. Turning his head, Kevin's 2 red eyes glared in my direction. Trying my best to keep my face straight, I shook my head. Kevin, that was embarrassing, don't do that again. Speechless, Kevin raised his hand and pointed at me. Why you? Chapter 4 of If. Crash. With a loud crash, an orc came crashing down on the hard ground. Ha ha ha. I will definitely make you pay for what you've done. Kevin swore to himself as he stared at the orc opposite him. With his head on the ground and his eyes closed, the orc was knocked down cold. The opponent is knocked out cold, the match is over. The referee's voice resounded across the grounds, marking him the victor of the duel. Winner, Kevin Voss. He will be advancing to the top 64 of the tournament. Announcing his victory, the referee raised Kevin's hand in the air. The loud cheers coming from the audience rang out. Kevin in return smiled at the audience. That piece of shit. Or at least pretended to smile. In reality, he was still fuming about what had happened yesterday. The humiliation and embarrassment he felt were something he had never felt before in his life. Just recalling what happened sent shivers down his spine. The embarrassment was just too much. Turning his head and staring towards the distance where Rin stood, Kevin deeply sighed. Then turning his head, he looked towards Emma, who was seated next to Rin. Noticing his stare, the 2 of them waved in his direction. Staring at the 2 of them from the arena grounds, doubt crept inside of Kevin's heart. Could the figure in the dream really be Rin? Part of him truly wanted to dismiss such thoughts from his mind, but after looking back at the past, Kevin realized that there was a chance that the figure in the vision was Ren. The Hallberg incident, the time when they were attacked by demons when they were returning from the dungeon, and just a week ago when he lost himself. In those times, Ren truly reminded Kevin of the figure in the vision. No matter how many times he wanted to deny reality, he knew that he couldn't. But Kevin wasn't planning on letting those visions dictate his mind. In the first place, he never truly understood what the visions signified. Were they a vision of the possible future? Or were they simply just visions? He spent a lot of time trying to rack his brain over the matter, but regardless of how much he thought about it, he couldn't quite understand it. In the end, he just stopped thinking about it. He realized that thinking on the matter was simply going to be a waste of time. Be it the present, past, or whatever the visions signified, Kevin was not planning on letting the visions corrupt his mind and turn his back on his friend. Never. The real matches should begin now. With my arms crossed, I solemnly gazed at the platforms below. The real matches? Yeah. I nodded my head. Seated next to me was Emma, who was leaning back with her cap held down, covering her face. A small shadow cast over her beautiful face. Apart from the two of us, pretty much everyone else was fighting in the arenas below. Jean, Amanda, Hein, Ava, you name it, they were all fighting. Somehow, I ended up stuck with Emma whilst waiting for our turns. What I mean is that the next opponents are going to be extremely hard to deal with. Munch, fudge. The repetitive munching sound of her chewing on her gum rang out. From the way she was acting, she didn't seem to be the least bit worried. Munch, much, I'll still win. Say that when you get matched up with Kevin. Pop. Emma's bubble burst apart. Even better. This way he will finally fight me seriously for once. Lifting her head, a fire appeared in her pupils. It was clear that she was excited at the prospect of fighting Kevin. Suit yourself. If Kevin really goes all out against you, you'd probably lose in a single move, I thought as I shrugged my shoulder. She didn't need to know anyway. The chances of her going against Kevin were the same as going against me. The only difference was that I wasn't planning on going on easy on her if she did go up against me. Oh look, Kevin's looking at us. I waved in Kevin's direction. Really? Raising her hat and staring at Kevin, Emma waved her hand too. With a forced smile on his face, Kevin waved back. He still looks embarrassed from yesterday, I muttered out loud as I stared at Kevin's forced smile. Overhearing my words, Emma's face cringed as she lowered her hat. Ugh, don't remind me. Winner, Kejigoth. He will be advancing to the top 64 of the tournament. Following her words, the referee announced another winner and my previous joyous mood shifted. Lowering my head, a deep frown emerged on my face. He's strong. Walking back to his area was an enormous orc. Update faster perks? Google search pan.no.valve remembered to remove punctuation. His very presence attracted the attention of the spectators as his frightening display of power over the tournament had made people realize that he was a fearsome contender for the top spot. Winner Sarfu. He will be advancing to the top 64 of the tournament. Winner Valian Venmoira. He will be advancing to the top 64 of the tournament. Winner Borilig Barrelbeard. He will be advancing to the top 64 of the tournament. Following him, a series of new names started getting called up. A trace of solemnness appeared on my face as I stared at the individuals whose names were being called up. They are all higher ranked than me. I could tell from a simple glance that they were all rank from the undulations of mana surrounding their bodies. Winner Gilbert von Dexteroy. He will be advancing to the top 64 of the tournament. Yet again attracting my attention was another announcement, and the frown on my face deepened. This time it was out of annoyance. How troublesome. Proudly standing in the arena was Gilbert, who basked in the cheers of the crowd. With a calm and composed look, he walked back to his stands. With a rank of, he was someone that I needed to watch out for. I can't believe that scum is also participating. Looks like I wasn't the only one that felt annoyed by Gilbert's appearance as Emma lifted her hat and threw a disgusted look in his direction. Well, he is only 25. He just barely made it to the threshold. The maximum age one could participate was 25 years and Gilbert just barely made it. Tisk, sometimes I forget that he's only a couple of years younger than us. Emma clicked her tongue before once again lowering her cap and basking in the sunlight coming from the sun. Following her words, a few more people's names were called up. Those were the names of the winners of the first half of the round of 128. 10 minutes after the winners were announced, it was time for the second half of the matches to begin. Guess it's my turn now. Standing up, I stretched my shoulders. So far the matches had been smooth sailing, but I knew that whoever my next opponent was, it was going to be someone powerful. I could no longer hold back as I did before. Platform 13, Karalium vs Han Yufei. Please may the contestants make their way to the platform. Hearing my alias being called out, my hands froze mid-stretch. Abruptly lifting my head and staring towards the designated platform, I saw a youth slowly walk to it with a calm and composed look. A calm yet dangerous aura spread throughout his whole body as walked toward the platform. Shit. I silently cursed underneath my breath. Although I did expect someone strong, I didn't think they would be at this caliber. Han Yufei rank and a former classmate of mine. Someone whose combat talents were on the same level as the protagonists, and someone who I had been keeping in mind for a while. Oh, this is going to be an exciting match to see, Emma muttered from behind as she lifted her hat. Turning my head, I rolled my eyes. Right. Well, she isn't entirely wrong. Han Yufei was definitely someone who I would definitely have trouble fighting. My matchup did not attract that much attention. Update faster perks? Search p. and a no.velm. Remember to remove punctuation with the people having already witnessed the same repetitive magic card attack system from me. There really wasn't any excitement for my match as I headed down to the platform. Stepping onto the arena, I removed all unnecessary thoughts from my mind as I focused my attention on my opponent. Han Yufei. Standing opposite me with his hands behind his back, Han Yufei gazed in my direction with a small frown on his face. Seemingly trying to peer through me, I merely smiled at his stare. With a frown on his face, Han Yufei opened his mouth. Are you going to use those cards to fight me? Who knows? I replied in a playful tone. I most likely will. Of course, the playfulness was merely a front I was putting on as I knew that he was going to be an extremely tough opponent for me. I see. At my words, Han Yufei nodded his head before he stopped speaking. A brief moment of silence ensued. However, the silence did not last for long as it was soon broken by the referee's shout. Match begin. Bang. In the next instant, Han Yufei's body shot out. Appearing halfway through the arena with a stomp of his left foot, Han Yufei's body rose in the air. His leg ripped through the air with a crackling sound filled with outstanding force. Like a whip, it venomously aimed for my head. A powerful wind blew past my face as the kick swiftly headed my way. In response to his kick, I merely raised my hand. I wanted to see just how powerful his attack was. Bang! A powerful blast spread as my arm came into contact with his kick. The power of his kick was so strong that my arm recoiled back. Han Yufei quickly followed up after his first attack as he thrust his hand forward. With his fingers linked together like a sharp dagger, they headed straight for my neck. Dangerous, I thought as I stared at the incoming attack. Update faster? Please come to channeling my mana towards the tip of my fingers. I flicked my left hand and a card popped up in front of Han Yufei's hand. Bang! A powerful blasting sound resounded throughout the square as a wild and powerful wind unfurled throughout the arena. Following this, an enormous ice pillar appeared. The pillar did not stay for long as it soon cracked apart before shattering completely. Crash! Standing a few meters away from me, surprise flashed across Han Yufei's face as his movements came to a stop. From the way you reacted after my attack, I can tell that you are hiding your strength. He carefully moved his head up and down as he scrutinized me from head to toe. You are far stronger than you let out. I can tell this from the way you were able to react to my attack. Leaning forward, Han Yufei took a pose as the air around him changed completely. I don't understand why you are hiding your strength, but I will now take things up a notch. This might be dangerous, I thought as I looked at Han Yufei. If before he looked like a calm and composed individual, right now he looked like a terrifying dragon that wanted to devour me alive. Then taking a deep breath, Han Yufei muttered, "Martial body." The moment Han Yufei uttered those words, mana surged over from all around and poured into his body. Strands of mana light swirled around his body as the ground beneath his feet started to crack. His entire presence changed completely as heavy solemnness descended on my face. However, amidst the solemnness was a trace of excitement. That was because finally I could see one of the techniques that I had been coveting for a very long time. Martial body. A secret ancient Chinese technique that would push the body to the limit and forcefully raise the subrank of a person by one. It was a godly technique that once mastered could even help someone train faster than before. Get ready. Snapping me out of my thoughts was Han Yufei's cold voice rang out. Following this, with a loud bang, his body suddenly disappeared from where he was standing before reappearing right before me. Bang. Chapter 406, Talk 1. Bang. A large palm appeared in my vision, magnifying in front of me at an incredible speed. A powerful wind pounced on me, causing my heart to tremble a little. The fact that Han Yufei was 5th ranked in the lock was definitely proof of his strength. Staring at the incoming palm, I immediately decided to use one of my skills. Eyes of Chronos. Upon activation, the world around me started to slow down significantly. In fact, it came to a complete standstill. But even though time had slowed, it had only slowed down from my eyes. My body was also frozen. Fortunately, my brain could keep up with everything that was happening around me. I can't avoid it. Carefully staring at Han Yufei's incoming attack, I realized that it couldn't be avoided. The attack was simply too fast and too close to me at this point in time for me to avoid it. Although faint, I could also see a small suctioning force coming from Han Yufei's palm. Even if I somehow managed to dodge the attack, the result would still be the same. As such, after deliberating on the many different scenarios presented before me, I opted for the simplest solution. The one. Activating for the one for a split second, I simultaneously deactivated Eyes of Chronos. Han Yufei's hand faltered. It was only for a split second, but it was enough to buy me enough time to cross my arms together in a defensive posture. Boom. Han Yufei's palm heavily landed on my arms. A tremendous power came pouring down on me. Keith. Feeling the tremendous impact of his attack, my body shook and I slid all the way back to the edge of the arena, only stopping at the very edge of the arena. As my feet stopped at the edge of the arena, lifting my head, I shook my arms, which were completely numb from the pain at this point. Man, that hurts. I may somewhat be used to intense pain by this point, but the power behind the attack was no joke. It felt as though the bones in my arms had completely shattered. That was just how powerful the attack was. It also had to be noted that Han Yufei had only attacked me with a simple palm attack. It was not a fancy skill or technique, just a regular palm strike. Yet the power hidden within that simple strike was incredible. Lowering my hands, I took a deep breath. Slowly, the mana in the atmosphere began to converge into me. Bang! Without giving me enough time to recuperate, taking a step forward, bending his body forward like a predator that was about to hunt its prey, Han Yufei's body shot in my direction. This time he was even faster than before, as an afterimage of his lingered in the air for a brief moment of time. Staring at the incoming Han Yufei, pressing my foot onto the ground, the mana around me swirled wildly, creating a faint green coating around my body. Then, releasing the tension in my foot, my body shot in Han Yufei's direction. To read more chapters, a cold light flashed across Han Yufei's eyes as he stared at my approaching figure. Raising both hands in the air, tangible mana began to swirl and emerge from his hands, creating sharp energy blades. As he moved, his clothes flapped out while the muscle hidden beneath his clothes exploded outwards. An imposing aura began to spread out from his body. Thump, thump. In a short span of less than a dozen seconds, Han Yufei and I exchanged a total of 20 moves. No longer holding back my strength, I fully unleashed my ranked aura, matching his aura under the state of martial body. Although I couldn't pay attention to the surroundings, I knew that our fight was drawing the heads of everyone present as the force behind each and every one of our attacks increased for every exchange. It had gotten to the point where powerful sonic booms echoed throughout the arenas as the both of us remained on equal footing with each other. Boom. My fist connected with Han Yufei's. A wild wind spread from the point of contact between our fists. Boom. 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 Separating from each other, our fists repeatedly met. This continued for the next 5 minutes as blood soon started to drip down on both of our knuckles. Lowering my head and staring at my fist, I thought, Chicken lam emotilon va con dao goi qua banasi bien mat my mai. Should I use the keiki style? Had I been using the keiki style, there was a high chance for me to defeat him. But that would expose my identity to the Union and especially Aaron. That was a no-go for me, as all the preparation I had made this past week in Issa Nor would go to waste. Boom. Meeting Han Yufei's fist once again, the both of us once again separated from each other. Taking a look at Han Yufei, whose breathing was quite rough, I grinned. I concede. But before I could even finish speaking, Han Yufei turned his attention toward the referee and directly forfeited the match. My face froze slightly. Are you sure you wish to surrender? The referee asked. Turning his head toward my direction, Han Yufei's eyes lingered on my body for a short second before he nodded. Yes, I am positive. Very well. The referee nodded before pointing in my direction. Winner, Karalium. He will be advancing to the top 64 of the tournament. Thunderous cheers broke out as the referee announced the result of our match. I could feel the eyes of numerous individuals look at me with renewed interest. Not caring for the stares one bit, I ran to Han Yufei. Oi, hold on, why did you give up? I do not wish to fight a fight where my opponent is not even taking me seriously. Han Yufei calmly replied before directing his attention toward my hands. I can tell from a glance that you do not specialize in body combat. Raising his hand, Han Yufei opened up the palm of his hand. To my surprise, it was devoid of any calluses. This is how the hand of someone who has trained in hand-to-hand combat should look like. Yours is nowhere near that. Han Yufei explained. Yours is filled with calluses, an obvious sign of weapon usage. If you are on the same level as me when I'm using one of my strongest techniques, I don't see the need to continue this farce. Before I could say anything, Han Yufei hopped off the stage and left. Well, that was unexpected. I thought while scratching the back of my head. I really didn't think that he would have been able to tell this from our brief exchange. Shrugging my shoulders, I turned around and similarly hopped off the stage. What devious trick did you use to make him surrender? The first one to greet me was Melissa, who immediately threw a jab in my direction. Her eyes were filled with malice. Evidently clear that she was still resenting me for what I did yesterday. At least I didn't pretend to lose just like a certain someone. I quickly shot back. In order to avoid participating in the fights, Melissa deliberately lost her matches yesterday. Had to say, her acting skills were superb. When she got eliminated, it truly seemed as though she had used all of her strength to fight. Sounds like a smart move to me, Melissa replied with a yawn. Turning my attention away from her, I glanced at Amanda, who had been staring at me all along. Meeting her gaze, I couldn't help but say, "What's wrong? Have you perhaps been charmed by my fighting prowess?" It took a moment for Amanda to process my words, and when she did, her face cringed back in a way that made it obvious to me that she was trying to imply, as if to add insult to injury, she added, "Han Yufei is much more charming." Is that so? My brows knit. That actually bugged me quite a bit. I swear my charm was higher than his. Glancing at Kevin, who was talking to Emma for a brief moment, I decided to sit down and stare at the next few matches. Oh, it's Hein. My attention instantly gathered towards one of the platforms where Hein stood. His opponent seemed to be pretty strong, but with his sturdy build and perfect timings, Hein was able to swiftly defend himself from the opponent's attack. He really has improved a lot, I thought in admiration as I watched him from the stand. Sadly, I knew that his strength was not enough for him to place in the top 10s. At least not now that I took a good look at who the opponents were. To read more chapters, they were simply in a different league than him. For the next 10 minutes, Hein defended while his opponent continuously attacked. Hein's battle strategy was simple: wear out his opponents before dealing the finishing move. And that was exactly what he did. Gathering all of his mana towards his shield, he quickly smashed it against the opponent's body, sending him crashing against the other side of the arena. Following this, the referee checked up on his opponent before finally declaring him the victor of his match. Not bad, not bad, I thought as I saw him head for a different section in the stands. Oh, it was then that I spotted Jean. Seated next to Arnold and Troy, he appeared to be carefully analyzing the matches happening below. If there was one person that changed the most after my absence, it was without a doubt Jean. Compared to before, he was a lot more attentive to detail and never took things for granted as he did in the past. His changes were so drastic that Troy, someone who was supposed to turn on him in the original timeline, actually still stuck with him. Honestly, I was pleasantly surprised by this development. Now that I think about it, apart from him and Emma, I pretty much antagonized everyone present. I really didn't know. Should I or should I not? Staring at Ren, who was deep in thought, Kevin's foot nervously tapped onto the hard ground. Should I tell him about my visions? Now that he had decided to trust Ren, Kevin was struggling to decide on whether to come clean to him or now. What he meant by clean was that he wanted to come clean to him with regards to his visions and what he saw in them. There was only one thing stopping him from doing so. And that was the fact that he might have to reveal some of his secrets to Ren. Despite the fact that he didn't want to reveal them as it might expose Ren as well as him to danger, Kevin felt that this was necessary. If he wanted to prevent the vision from ever happening in the future, Kevin believed that he had to come clean to Ren and show him that he trusted him. From the way things were going, Kevin felt a crack appear in his trust towards Ren. This was not something he wanted. Whenever the vision flashed back in his head, Anger would rise from deep within his body. He had to resolve this problem quickly. "What are you thinking so hard about?" Snapping him out of it was Emma's voice. Raising her hat and staring at him, Emma continued. "Since yesterday I've seen you with that look on your face. Is there something wrong? You know you can talk to me." Kevin smiled at her words. He promptly shook his head. "Thank you, but I can't really tell you what is happening." "Oh? Is that so?" Lowering her hat and crossing her arms, Emma closed her eyes. "Well, if you're ever planning on telling me what's going on, I'm over here." "Thank you." Kevin smiled. Then, turning his attention back towards Rin, he stood up. He had made up his mind. He was going to have a serious talk with Rin regarding his visions. Chapter 407. After Hein's match, there were a couple of more matches, but none interested me, so I just made small talk with the others in order to pass time. Fortunately, Hein's match was one of the very last ones, as the round of 128 finally came to an end after one last big battle. Though I said big, it was only like that because the two opponents facing each other were of similar strength and so was very entertaining to watch. This will be it for today's matches. I hope the contestants will take this time to rest for tomorrow's matches, the elven lady once again said as she showed up on the stage. Following her words, everyone stood up and left the premises. Similarly, standing up just as I was about to follow the others out, Kevin came up to me. He had a serious look on his face. Instantly my brows knit. "What's wrong?" "Rin, we need to talk." There was undeniable solemnness in his voice as he spoke to me. Glancing around to make sure that the others had left, I slowly nodded. Kevin wasn't the type of guy to act like this unless there really was something wrong. As such, I knew that the situation was serious. "Where should we talk?" "Your apartment." "My apartment?" "Yeah. It's the place that has the least amount of people nearby." "Fair. And so we decided to head to my apartment to talk. The walk wasn't long, as within 10 minutes we were already there, but it was strangely uncomfortable as I felt this weird tension coming out from Kevin's face. His face reminded me of someone who was just about to go to war. Thigh clank. Opening the door of my apartment and letting Kevin in, I slumped down on one of the chairs of the room. Kevin shortly followed suit as he sat on the seat opposite of me. An uncomfortable silence descended on the room as Kevin leaned forward, with both his arms on his thighs. Interlocking his hands together, Kevin's foot repeatedly tapped onto the ground. Seeing that Kevin was having difficulty speaking, I decided to break the silence. "So, what did you want to talk about?" Lifting his head, Kevin looked up at me. "Say." His brows furrowed even more tightly. "Do you perhaps have a secret that you can't tell me?" "A secret?" I was taken aback by his abrupt question. Did he find something out? And isn't that rather vague? I had plenty of secrets, and so I wasn't really sure about which one he was referring to. Nodding his head, Kevin's crimson-red eyes continued to gaze in my direction. "Yeah, do you have any secrets that you can't tell me?" Leaning back and deeply gazing into Kevin's eyes, I eventually nodded my head. "There are. The fact that this world was a novel, the book, my skills, I had plenty of secrets that I couldn't tell him. If he found out any of those secrets, I wasn't too sure how he would react. There was a high chance that a rift could form between us, creating some unnecessary drama that I did not want." "I see." The tapping of Kevin's foot became more prominent. This was an obvious indication to me that he was nervous. "What's going on with him? What is up with you? Don't drag it out, tell me exactly what." "I've been having visions lately." Kevin cut me off. But I wasn't the least bit mad as his words instantly attracted my attention. "Visions?" I don't recall Kevin ever having visions in the novel. "Another butterfly effect?" "Yeah." Kevin nodded. "What type of visions were they?" "I'm not too sure, but I've written them down. Take a look for yourself and tell me if you know anything." He proceeded to take out a small book from his dimensional space before handing it to me. Extending my hand, I took the book. Although I was confused, I still complied. "Let's see." Glancing at Kevin one more time, I lowered my head and directed my focus on the book in my hands. Since Kevin is this serious, it must be something important. "What the?" I initially didn't have many expectations when opening the book. Why would I? I didn't think there would be anything I didn't know, but I was quickly proven wrong as my hands froze. Time Remnant? Kashik Records? Black-clothed guy? Jezebeth? The more I read, the greater the confusion on my face became. That was because I didn't know any of the things that were written in the book apart from the Akashic records, which I already knew beforehand. They were essentially an entity that acted as the gods of this world, yet at the same time couldn't be considered gods. It was a confusing concept that I decided to add near the end of the novel, but that wasn't what shocked me. Kevin isn't supposed to find out about the Akashic records till later in the novel. Not only that, but the visions that he was currently experiencing were also not part of the novel. My head throbbed. What in the world is happening? Most likely, the butterfly effect of my actions had pushed forward a couple of plot points several times ahead of where they should have been. Sucked, but it was nothing new. Do you want to read more chapters? Come to happen many times in the past, and so I was able to quickly recompose myself. Flip. Without saying anything, I flipped to the next page. Reading through the passage, my eyes opened wide in shock and my mind blanked. I wouldn't have had to resort to this if you hadn't been so compassionate. I hope her death can finally set your mind straight. No matter how important of a piece you are, a piece should act as a piece should act. I hope this will finally clear your head. Abruptly lifting my head, I looked at Kevin, who was looking back at me with a serious look on his face. Opening and closing my mouth repeatedly, I didn't know what to say. It felt as though a lump was stuck in my throat, preventing me from speaking. Lowering my head and once again reading the book, my hands shook. It can't be, I muttered in disbelief as I shook my head. The way of speaking, and those words, that's definitely me. You felt it too, right? Silently gazing in my direction throughout the whole time, Kevin finally spoke up. Extending his hand and pointing at the book, he questioned. The person in the vision was you, wasn't it? This. I wanted to deny his words with all my might, but I couldn't. The man described in the book reminded me an awful lot of me. Or rather, me under the influence of monarchs and differ. No, it can't be. I muttered out loud as horrifying thoughts flashed across my face. Did you figure something out? Kevin asked from the side. But I didn't respond. I was too immersed in my thoughts. Monarch's indifference. 2 words repeatedly rang inside of my mind as I reread the passage multiple times. I swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Ever since the first time I got monarch's indifference, I had always had my reservation about using it. Not only did it feel as though I would lose all control of my body, but it also felt as though my actions were somehow getting controlled by someone. That aside, now that I look back, my chess ideology did not stem from meeting the previous Ren but from using monarch's indifference. Right, at first I thought that the ideologies that were being implanted inside of my head came from the moment I met the previous Ren, but that wasn't true at all. They came the moment I used monarch's indifference. They only got exponentially more prominent the moment I met the other Ren. Maybe that was why I never noticed it and only noticed it now that I was reading the notes. Shivers ran down my spine. Whew. Taking a deep breath, I tried to look back at any of the incidents revolving around me using monarch's indifference. There was one incident that particularly stood out to me. The time back in the dome when I activated it to save Kevin. More specifically, the time when I fought Aaron. At first, I thought that leaving Aaron alive was merely a side effect of monarch's indifference since my goal was saving Kevin. But was it really a fluke? It had to be, didn't it? After all, under monarch's indifference, all that mattered was the end goal, not the side goals. But there was this nagging feeling inside of my head that never ceased. I'm definitely overthinking things. I quickly shook my head, trying to dispel such thoughts. The theory was just too far-fetched to make sense, but something about that incident really bugged me off. Thinking back about my past, many of the big incidents that had occurred to me felt kind of forced. Almost as though someone was trying to manipulate the path that I needed to take. I couldn't quite explain it. It just felt that way. Ugh, my head hurts. The more I thought about it, the greater the throbbing sensation on my head became. Something just wasn't right. Gazing at Ren, who seemed to be in deep thought, Kevin remained quiet. At first he was a bit apprehensive at the thought of letting Ren know about his visions, but now that he was getting a good look at him, he was glad he did. Ren's reaction confirmed to him that he knew something was up. This was enough to tell him that there was some truth in the visions. No, that figure was Ren. Kevin was sure now. Kevin leaned back on the chair and exhaled. Now what? Even if he was able to confirm that the figure was Ren, what was next? Kevin really was unsure. Kevin knew for a fact that the vision was just like the name suggested, a vision. It was only a possible future. One that could be stopped. Kevin felt that coming to speak with Ren was the necessary step he had to take in order to prevent that event. Huh. While waiting for Ren to return to his usual self, glancing around the room, Kevin's face suddenly stiffened as he abruptly stood up. His reaction was so abrupt and unexpected that it attracted Ren's attention. Kevin, what's going on? Impossible. Staring towards the corner of the room with eyes wide open, Kevin's eyes paused on a familiar red book. How is that here? He shouted inside of his mind as his face clouded with disbelief. He was showing a similar reaction to that of Ren when he had just seen the notes. There was no way he could mistake the appearance of the book. He had been carrying it with him for over 2 years now. It was without a doubt that book. Kevin, what in the world is going on with you? Ren asked once more as his voice was filled with confusion. Without answering him, raising his hand, Kevin weakly pointed it towards the red book in the distance. Suddenly many different memories of the past resurfaces inside of his mind as he took a step back. No, he had a feeling that he wanted to make sure. Trembling all over, Kevin turned to look at Ren. Hey, do you see that? Ren's brows furrowed as he stared in the direction of where Kevin was pointing at. See what? The red book over there. Ren's face suddenly stiffened. He then slowly turned his face in Kevin's direction. You can see it? Kevin let out a strange sound as he slumped back on his chair. All the different memories of the past started piecing themselves together as Kevin finally realized something. Ren could also use the book. An uncomfortable silence descended on the room.